This podcast is presented to you by Angie Taylor, founding trustee of Land Bountiful Ministry, a private ministerial association. Land Bountiful Ministry is a private ministerial association with its own rules, terms, and conditions. Participation is conditional on membership of Land Bountiful Ministry. All information provided in this podcast is specifically created for private members of the ministry only. All content is offered for consideration, educational purposes, and private use only, and is not intended in any way to replace appropriate advice from appropriately qualified professionals. Each member is to discern for themselves the suitability of any and all information with regard to their own self and circumstances. Choosing to continue to listen to this podcast means you agree to be a member of Land Bountiful Ministry. Today I interview Cara Tyrrell, who empowers parents to be their child's first teacher and has a passion for lasting relationships among the family support network. Cara has bachelor degrees in ASL and Linguistics and a master's degree in education. She's a trained early childhood teacher, early years caregiver, continuing education consultant, and parent coach. In her preschool and kindergarten classrooms, she identified a pattern of undeveloped skill sets in her students, leading to a professional pivot as an online early childhood parent educator. Cara founded Core for Parenting, an online community and course platform for parents and caregivers that follows the developmental path of the young child while educating, empowering, and engaging parents and caregivers to be their child's brain architect between birth and 5 years of age, setting them up for success in school and life. Welcome to today's episode, Cara. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you and talk about all of the parenting things that we as parents didn't even know to think about or even research or study before having kids. So, hindsight is 2020, and now we have people like you to help us be even better parents. And so I'm really excited about what's going to unfold in this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this is a passion and this is a mission, and boy, this next generation of kids are primed to be really world ready, and I'm excited to share what I think and how I feel.
Let's talk about what you do specifically. That you have your Core for Parents program. You developed that, correct?
I did. Yeah, Core 4 Parenting is a 3-service model that I've developed.
Okay, so how did you come to discover this?
Well, it's a lifetime of knowing that my purpose here on this planet was to serve little people, and then growing into my evolution of service through my younger years of babysitting and nannying, and then my adolescent and my early adult years through my education. When I went to school, I got 2 bachelor's degrees, one in American Sign Language and one in linguistics. And then I had to make a choice what to do next. And I ended up getting my master's degree in education so that I could teach both in public school settings with hearing students and in deaf school settings with hard of hearing and deaf children. And it launched me into this journey of discovery where I saw kids from every educational playing field all coming to school with the same, I don't want to say discrepancies, just there were some pieces of readiness for school learning that every category of child I encountered was missing. And I thought, wow, I love the classroom. And I love being here with these preschoolers and kindergartners. They're excited, right? They're just starting their journey of learning.
Mhm.
But if we're starting the journey without all the puzzle pieces to be most successful, then what? And that led me to realize that there had to be a better way to prepare these kids for success. And that started at home, and it started at birth with their parents. And so Core 4 parenting was born.
It's amazing. And I acknowledge you for recognizing it starts at birth, people don't understand that from conception, our cells are starting to pick up on emotion and thought. And so by the time that the brain is developed, there's already data there. And so we come pre-programmed understanding birth, knowing how to breastfeed, and we have all of the languages in the world programmed in our brain. And our children come into the world already understanding what their parents are saying to them because they've been immersed in it, right? They've been
Right.
tucked inside their nice, warm, cozy womb. They've listened to mom and dad talk, not just with each other, but with everybody else that they've encountered. And they've learned some pretty intricate language that they can't speak. Right?
Exactly.
So the
And
level
it's
of
so
frustration that has to be there for them,
Mhm.
it is just mind-boggling to me. So for you to be that person that parents can go to and say, okay, now what? Where do I start so that they can be ready, for whatever expectations we have, or how do we let go of those expectations, or how do we parent the new tiny humans? Because as we've seen in the human, in human beings, there is an evolution. We have changed as human beings. And the tiny humans coming into the world now, they just seem to be wiser. They seem to want to move through life faster. They want to know now how to do it. And so as parents, it's so easy to be thrown for a loop, right?
Absolutely. And you know what I'm noticing is not only what you said, that our newest citizens here um, are really more ready to take on life than they ever have been before. The newest parents that I am interacting with are more ready to be intentional about parenting
Mhm.
than anyone I've seen in a previous generation. There's just something going on, and it's this beautiful shift. And parents know that they want to be part of parenting on purpose. And they know that that means that they have to say, how do I do that? What are the upskills that I need? I
Right.
go to any other job and they teach me what to do. They give me a mentor. There's a guidebook. I'm not saying there's exactly a guidebook for parenting because we all know there's not. Our tiny little humans come into this world with their own sense of who they are. But the guidebook starts there with being aware of who you brought into this world, being able to step back and observe your little person for who they are. And then the learning gets really fun because you end up learning a great deal about yourself and who you are in relationship to other people during the process. And you cultivate this beautiful collaborative relationship with your child based on Core 4 connectors, which are part of my program. And sometimes when I say this to parents, they say, oh, wow, is this okay? Is it okay that I want to have like an open communication, a mutual respect and shared honesty and a respect-filled relationship with my child from birth? Doesn't that somehow limit my authority? Because we've spent generations defining the parent-child relationship as a power play, for
Mhm.
lack of a better word. And I say, oh, no, no, actually, you're doing the exact opposite. You are anchoring your authority in such a way that they will forever trust all of those connected pieces in your relationship. And you're doing it while their brain is growing the fastest and learning the most.
And that's like the
And for
thing.
me,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
For me, when I get to see the aha moment on their face, that kind of rewrites that parent-child definition of what an early relationship can look like and feel like. It's just the best feeling in the world.
Absolutely. And it's really exciting for me because I know with my oldest, didn't believe in, cry it out. But it did give him opportunities to just be in his crib and fuss. And if after 10 minutes he hadn't settled down and gone to sleep, I went and got him. There was a reason he was still awake. There was a reason he was fussing. So I would go get him. I know parents that haven't done that. I know parents that have locked their child in a bedroom until the child just basically screams themselves to sleep. And that just hurts my heart. But one of the things that I learned with my oldest also is that I learned early on that if I put him at the end of the crib with his feet up against the headboard or the footboard, I guess, it would take him 12 hours until of scooting and fussing to move to the top of the bed. And because he couldn't move any further, he would start really screaming. And I remember waking up at different times of the night thinking that I heard him. And there was, no, I don't hear him. Now I'm dating myself. This was pre-baby monitor time, right? So if I didn't hear him, I wasn't getting up to go check on him. Or the rare occasion that I would get up and go check on him, he was quiet, he was laying still, must have just been my imagination. And what I didn't realize was that there were times when he was fussing. There were times that he was needing me. That's why he was scooting. He was fussing. He was needing mom. And it didn't strike me as being an issue until he was a teenager and wouldn't tell me anything. He didn't trust me. And he learned at 2 months of age, when I was not responding to him in his crib, that he couldn't trust me. And that was really hard for me to acknowledge and to forgive myself for that. And make the necessary changes for his younger siblings, and apologize to him. I think that was probably the most shocking thing for him was my parent apologized to me, but learning that, how am I going to teach him to be a parent if that doesn't also include apologizing because I didn't know any better? Because like you said, babies don't come into the world carrying their manual. Right?
No, they come into the world and they are they're 100% sensory beings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've heard the personal development phrase that flies around, we're not physical beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in different measures in different parts of our life, but newborns are 100% sensory.
Mm-hmm.
All they do is feel. Things feel to their touch, to their smell, to their taste. They have that sensory experience when they're cuddled up next to you. They smell the milk. Their entire early life, 0 to 6 months, is really sensory. And so we're filtering for them. What is the experience that we want you to be feeling right now? Now, that said, trust is a feeling. Love is a feeling. Respect, honesty, knowing that you can communicate with someone and have a voice. These are things that build into our sensory experience. And so, yes, starting young, giving them the space, showing them that we are in that relationship with them. And your sleep example, we have a sleep soothing system. Again, it's not a cry it out, but we use all the senses and then pair the senses with the neurobiological cognition that kids as early as 3 months old can start to make cause and effects with. If something feels like this, then I am able to start developing my first skill. And my first skill can be self-soothing. And I continue. So at Core 4 Parenting, what we have done is really unique. We've taken that parenting personal development concept that is really, really new to the scene, right? That you are you, you were a human and a person before you had a baby, and that person did not disappear. Just added another layer to who you are. So let's evolve that next layer of mom or dad while continuing to own your own self. The parenting personal development piece is huge. And then I've taken the early childhood education and development and built it into the curriculum. So parents are upskilling themselves and learning how their kids are developing phase by phase by phase.
It's just so exciting to me. I'm thinking, what is the world going to look like in a mere 20 years with the up and coming parents, changing the parent-child dynamic from a do what I say, not as I do dynamic to a I hear you, I acknowledge you, how can I help you? From the I'm here to control your every move until you're 18 years old to the I am here to lead, guide, and direct you toward your pursuits. What do you want to do with your life? Because that's going to be different than what I do with my life. You know, acknowledging that not every child wants to go to college, not every child's dream and dream job will take them through college, and understanding that that's okay. If all that parents really want for their kids is happiness, that this is the way to do it, is to just truly get down on their level and say, I'm here to first discover who you are as an individual, to acknowledge that, to love you, and then to lead, guide, and direct you down the path that is yours to take.
Absolutely. And, you know, another thing I get when I have this conversation with new parents, because they have to break out of kind of the generational, what they brought to the table, and then make their own decisions and say, okay, I'm going to design this experience the way I want it to be. And another question I always get is, well, does that mean that this is going to be a permissive space? And I say, you know, the most beautiful thing of all happens. You become collaborative problem solvers. And inside of that, you're inside that boundary, right? It's still your home. There's still expectations and structures and routines, and there is okay behavior and there is not okay behavior. There are lines that get drawn in the sand. It just means that you are able to actually have conversations with your kids, to your point, instead of just do what I do. It's here's what I need you to do, and here's why. Here's what I need to do, and here's why. It's more of a do as I'll do, and I'll learn to do better.
Important. So important. You know, I've got way too many friends that just do not have a relationship with their parents, their mother or their father, because they felt like they grew up being misunderstood, being ignored most of the time, and being treated like they were just supposed to do what mom and dad told them to do, and they didn't have a brain of their own. And that just really hurts my heart. I did not grow up in that, even though we were growing up around the same time. I mean, I'm 53, so to think that I didn't grow up with that. But part of the reason I didn't grow up with that is because I had a single mom. And so she had to parent differently. She couldn't always come down and be the bad guy. She had to look at us for who we were and where we were going, with the understanding she just wanted us to be happy. And we always knew when we were sitting down to have a really important conversation where we needed to pay attention, because she would always start with, "I love you." And so then it was like, okay, I'm not sure what I did, but I need to just listen, because she's coming from a place of love, and whatever comes out of her mouth next may not be perfect, but it is coming from a place of love. And so I'm so grateful to have had that growing up situation, of a mom who was there to listen. And I mean, she would, even if she was in the kitchen doing dishes and one of us came to her and said, "Mom, I want to talk," instead of saying, "Yeah," and continuing on with the dishes, "Go ahead," she would turn the water off. She would put the wash rag down, dry off her hands, and we would sit at the dining room table so that she was present with us. And now looking back at that and seeing some of the instances of parenting that you see when you're at the grocery store or you're at the park or whatever, and I'm just like, my mom was very unique for that time frame.
And
And I'm
that's the intentionality, right?
Yeah,
That's the intentional piece that we're talking about here. And it doesn't take as much time as people think.
right. That's absolutely right. Yep.
It
I've heard
saves you
moms, it
time on the other end.
absolutely. Yeah. I've had moms say to me, "Well, I'm trying to get this thing done and my kids won't leave me alone." And I tell them 15 minutes. And they'll look at me, "What do you mean 15?" I said, "Give them 15 minutes and they'll leave you alone for hours. They just need the 15 minutes of your undivided time. And until you give it to them, they're going to do their thing, because they need you right now more than anybody else or anything else needs you. And it's okay to step away from whatever you're doing. And especially now with all the virtual stuff that we're doing, we have
Right.
to be willing to say, I know that I've scheduled a meeting with you. My child needs me right now. Can we shift it 15 minutes or reschedule? Or are you okay with my child being on my lap and being in here with me? Um, so it's time for humanity to make this shift.
Yeah, we're all sharing space in a very different way now, which means we have to kind of redefine what that looks like. Um, and these are great opportunities, depending on the age of your child,
Mhm.
to teach them time management. So your child is 3 and they're coming up and they need you, they need you, they need you. Well, number one, if you keep deflecting that need, they're going to keep not trusting that you're going to be there when they need you.
Right.
Number two, if you attend to the need and say, I would love to give you 15 minutes. I would love to play with you for 15 minutes and just you. Here's something I need to finish first. I'm going to give you this timer. When the timer goes off, it's your job to come get me, and it's my job to stop doing whatever I'm doing and play with you for 15 minutes. You have set a time management strategy. You have done a problem solving strategy. And more importantly, you have taught them that you mean what you say and you say what you mean, and they can trust your words. The amount of good that came out of those 3 sentences that took me 20 seconds to say. It's just such powerful stuff, but it's not necessarily intuitive. And so I don't want parents listening to think, wow, well, if that would never occur to me to say, does that mean I'm a bad parent? No. It means that we're talking about parenting differently. And when we're talking about doing something differently, we need to go find the source and learn how to do it.
Totally agree. I totally agree. Yeah. Another thing mom taught me, my mother passed away in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the last things she taught me was, there's no such thing as a good parent or a bad parent. You're either an effective parent or an ineffective parent. And the fact of the matter is, we are all both of those at different times and different situations. So
Amen.
we just have to give ourselves grace and understand that we're learning how to be parents every year of their lives. We are
Yeah.
having to shift and change and learn how to parent this new person in this new stage of their life. I tell expectant parents, just like, there's no such thing as the perfect parenting book. There's lots of books about parenting. None of them are about your child. You can take bits and
Right.
pieces, but none of them are about your child. Your child is the only one who can give you the volume for them. It's not a chapter, but it is a volume
Mm-hmm.
of how to raise them, you know?
Yeah. And the evolution, see, here's where things get a little haywire, right? The evolution of a parent, this adult, grown up, less spiritual, more physical being, is much slower than the evolution of the child, who is developing at lightning speed. 1 million neural connections being made every second of their life during the first year. And so it's no wonder that sometimes it gets away from us, because unless we keep up with understanding what's happening inside that brain of theirs, we very quickly get underwater.
Absolutely. And then we start feeling like we're no good. I'm really bad at this. I'm not going to have any more kids. And not understanding that we've all been there, we've all done that. And it just takes that time to just sit and go, okay, I got to take a deep breath. And I'm in a state of learning. And I have to learn from this child how to handle all of these different situations for this particular child. And I'm going to be behind them. They're going to be developing ahead of me, because it's going to take me time to figure out what it is they're trying to tell me, especially in those years where they are not able to verbally communicate with us.
Right.
They are just
Right.
as frustrated as we are that they understand us but cannot respond to us
Right.
verbally. And sometimes that's
I
why
want
they
to circle back. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because they're just frustrated.
Yeah. And, we have great solutions for that too. But I want to circle back to something you said a little while ago, which is you apologized to your son.
Mhm.
We have to be okay being vulnerable and showing that we are adults, but that doesn't mean we're perfect and that we're always right. Another huge breaking point for a lot of people where they say, I'm going to choose this new path. And I'm not even talking about teenagers specifically. If we make a mistake, if we promise something that we can't end up delivering to a 2-year-old, we have to tell them that. We have to own it. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I thought I would be able to read you a story before bed tonight, but it turns out I can't, and daddy's going to do it instead.
Mhm.
Honestly, they'll handle it better than you think. But if you
Yeah.
avoid it, if you try to make it not a big deal, if you try to make it like it's your right to break your promises to your kids, then they will hold you accountable. And that's when things start to go into the power struggle space.
Totally agree. Yeah.
About the language development that you were discussing,
Mhm.
that receptive language piece, that your baby's brain is creating the language they will eventually use to communicate with you long before they can actually talk to you.
Mhm.
At Core 4, we have a course. It's called Sign to Speak, the Communication Bridge, because the kinesthetic movement of using hands is a capability your child has long before the ability to create phonemes and speech with their tongues. Um, and so it's fantastic. We have parents who are using it from infancy, just making it part of the way they communicate with their kids. And then all of a sudden they have a 7-month-old who is signing back And then that 8, 9, 10 month old can do 2 signs and 3 signs and 4 signs. And they're giving their baby a voice in their home before they have one.
And I love that. I have so many friends that, yeah, our youngest is 13. And so I'm envious with, some of my younger friends that have these new babies and they're signing with them. I'm just like, I wish I had known to do that. Because I know how frustrating it was in those early years to have them just crying and you're not sure what's going on and you got to be the detective and figure it out. But to know that there is a way to give them that voice before they can actually use their mouth in that way and use their vocal cords in that way is huge. And
Yeah.
I think it's also important for the grandparents to get involved in that, learn the signs so that you can participate in that. There's just so much evolving in the arena of even pregnancy and birth, the things that have changed. A lot of the grandparents and great grandparents today were taught that jaundice was absolutely horrific and it was totally dangerous and you had to rush your child to the emergency room. And we now know that there's different types of jaundice. There is a type in which it is absolutely an emergency, but the other 3, there's things that parents can do from home without having to take their child to an emergency room. So it's really important for grandparents and great grandparents to acknowledge the fact that we have evolved and we have learned things from when they were having children, and to be open to these changes.
And the signing, they love it, right?
Oh
Aunts,
yeah,
uncles, grandparents. I mean, there's nothing more adorable or fun than being communicated to and with a child. It's the best.
absolutely.
My personal experience, obviously I have a degree in it, and the course is not meant to teach you ASL. Right? That's a different journey.
Right.
I picked the 24 signs from ASL that correlate to the 24 words we say to our child the most birth to 1.
Nice.
In that way, you are creating the lexicon for being able to have dialogue and conversations about everyday activities you're already talking about. And in my life, I did actually full out sign with my children when they were little. And my middle child ended up having a hearing loss. And we had no idea, right? Because they can't effectively diagnose those small losses that are based on ear infections until about 1.5 years old. But lucky me, she had the ability to communicate efficiently and effectively. So much so that after she had tubes put in her ears and we were able to reverse that minor hearing loss, she didn't want to stop signing with me. And so we had to kind of bridge that gap at that point to say, okay, this turned into kind of your native language. And now we're going to help you by pulling back a little so that you can use this new skill that you're learning to speak with your mouth. And so, but it was a lifesaver for us.
That's amazing. And it's a very good point. We don't know if anything like that is going to happen with our children. So giving them the ability to have a way to communicate with us is vitally important. So I want to talk on having this parenting mindset, and how can parents just like get into this parenting mindset that's totally different than how they were raised.
Yeah. Well, this is my favorite thing in the world, that parenting mindset and applying perspective. And that's where kind of the psychology and the theoretical come into it. And it's why on the other end, I make sure that our curriculum has science-based strategies and systems and structures and scripts, because I don't want to leave people hanging with, oh, what a beautiful vision that is. Well, how do I get there? We also have the how. But first, you need the vision, right? If somebody hands you the tools to do something, but you don't know what you're building, you're not going to get very far. So the proactive, collaborative parenting mindset that we teach at Core 4 is based on a parenting GPS that you set by designing a personalized parenting mission statement. And I love with all my heart that it turns into a PMS because it can be angsty like that, it can be edgy like that, but it is our big vision for who we want to raise, not what we want them to become, who we desire to raise in this world. And so a parenting mission statement is something that I work with parents who haven't even had their baby yet, or parents who have just brought their baby home from the hospital, to flash forward 25 years. And they put the words to the character of who the adult is that they have raised. And when we design that, all of a sudden they have their big vision. And when they bump up against those very normal stages of, whoa, this just got really hard, we stop and take a step back and say, which of the tools in your parenting toolbox will get you closer to that kid, the kind, courageous kid that you have a desire to raise, the team player, the one who can solve problems on the fly, the one who always listens to what the other person has to say. The definition of who you want to raise is kind of your northern star. So helping people design that parenting PMS is really, really special to me.
I love that. And it's just so important, like you said, to look at who do you want them to be, not necessarily what do you want them doing, but who do you want them to be? What otherwise, how do you even know how to lead, guide, and direct them if you don't even know what direction
Right?
you'd like to start going in? At some point they may turn you, a little bit this way and a little bit that way, because they're, humans. They have their own way of wanting to do things. But understanding that you have this mission and it's not set in stone, and um, it's not a way of forcing your child to be who you want them to be. Just so important. We have, my husband and I have gone from the parents who were the dictators to the parents who were the middle ground, and now the conversations we have with some of our young men, we acknowledge where they are in their journey, that they're starting to stretch out their boundaries because they're preparing to leave home, and there just seems to be more conflict between sons and parents. There seems to be a need amongst young men to make more of a I don't know, a big splash or a great big break in the relationship, while also acknowledging that we still need to have a good relationship. We understand you're getting ready to leave the home, but that doesn't mean you have to damage the relationship. We understand all of that. We have 9 kids total, so 5 of them are boys, and we've been down this road a few times already. But we've had some conversations where, my husband and I just kind of have to take a deep breath, and we go to our room and we talk to each other, about the words that were used and the way that child just spoke to us. And we have to go through that whole process of, that was rude, that was disrespectful, who is this child? And circle around until we get to the point of, we are grateful that they felt safe to speak to us with that language and that tone, knowing that they will always be loved. The door is always open for them. This is always a safe space. And when you're able to get to that point, when you're able to, as a parent, to say what matters most is that they know that they always have a place to land when life gets hard,
Right.
it's easier. It just makes it a little bit easier when they're yelling at you, and being what the world would see as being rude and disrespectful, when it's really just them using the words that they have available to them, in the best way possible to get their point across.
Yeah, and the intentional communication piece, I'm so glad you brought that up because it is a huge core in our program. Is that the words we say, the way we say them, the tone we use, that is part of this relationship building process. And, you know, you and I both have a very unique experience in that we have simultaneously had youngers and olders. For me, it was the act of being a full service nanny. And so I started over with other people's tiny, tiny babies while mine were navigating their tween and teen years. Mine are now 17 and 19 and kind of pushing that adult boundary as well. But what I found most fascinating, like it was really one of the reasons why I said the Core 4 curriculum has to be developed, is the language I used, the conversations I had, the way I structured my words, the choices I made in guiding kids to make their own choices and then own their own consequences were exactly the same, whether they were 2 or 12. The topics were different. The natural consequences for the choices they made were slightly different. But the overarching language methodology was the same. And if we can anchor in our kids when they are 2, that they can trust that that's how we're going to address a situation, they're going to be able to trust that we are going to address it the same way when they're 12 and 14 and 18. And that level of automatic emotion and conflict will just kind of come down to the center and allow us to have a conversation that hopefully doesn't lead there.
Right. Right. Well, and to also understand that, like I said, we've got 9 kids. So we had to, with each one, when we had a big challenge come up, it was really important to understand the message the younger kids were getting as we dealt with this issue with the older child. And making sure that they knew that, like I said before, this is a safe place to land regardless of what happens in your life. And I mean, we've had some doozy things. We've had some things where, as a couple, it almost caused a break in the relationship. But we had to come together and say, hey, this is the child. This has nothing to do with our relationship. Yeah, we're discovering we have different ways of thinking about this particular topic. But the bottom line is, what message does this child need to get from us? And what message do the rest of them need to receive as well? Because if we do things wrong, like if this one gets kicked out for doing this, all of these learn, I can't trust mom and dad. They just taught me that I'm not safe here, that there are limits. There are things that can kick me out of the house. And so making sure that we navigated those properly. So I think all too often parents just kind of fly off the handle and they just go berserk, instead of stepping back and taking that moment to really consider who all is involved, what is the real situation here, what can I fix, what can we together control, and how do we help them through those natural consequences that we don't have control over.
And what you just said is the epitome of the react versus respond parenting approach. We are teaching the responsive parenting methodology at Core 4. We all have reactions. There's no doubt about it. But when it matters most, it's about not just observing our kids and what triggers set them off, but observing ourselves and what triggers we know set us off. And when one of those triggers has been pushed, being able to observe it, stop, take that breath, and choose our response. Is it always perfect? No. But here's what science tells us. In that moment, even if it's a millisecond, that you stop and engage your brain, you have no choice but to now respond. That knee-jerk reaction has already passed. And that's exciting.
That is exciting. It's absolutely exciting. It's probably one of the biggest reasons that I'm really at odds with the concept of in a marriage, never go to bed angry. And it's not that I think that it's okay to go to bed angry. I think that there's too many couples that instead are just continuing to fight and argue instead of taking a step back, separate yourself from each other for a time, think about the role you played, think about the role they played, what's really making you angry, and then coming at it from a different perspective, responding to it instead of reacting. And
Right.
sometimes that takes time. Sometimes that does mean you need to go to bed feeling all of those feelings. Because sometimes you just need hours to pass so that your brain can process what just happened.
And that is why we've come full circle to it is essential that we know who we are in relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are in relationship with our partner. And then as individuals, we are both in relationship with our kids. My partner, my husband of 21 years, is not someone who can handle resolving an issue immediately. The amount of time it took me to learn, let him walk away, let him ride the tractor, let him play in his workshop. He will come back and have a conversation when he's ready, is embarrassing, and I'm not going to share it. Because I'm not that person. Who I am is someone who is very cognitive and linguistic, and I'm all about let's have a big, deep conversation and let's take it from every angle, and it's all going to wash itself out in the end.
Right.
And so we have had to figure out how to navigate that for ourselves. And I mean, that in and of itself, in a marriage, in a relationship, that's hard. Then you take the fact that you have 9 kids. Each one of them has a different natural way of dealing with challenge. Mm-hmm. And deciding, okay, I'll take my kids, right? I have 2 girls, and they are so different as all kids are. When my older is triggered, there is a no-fly zone. Let her walk. Let her hibernate in her room. Mm-hmm. Let her muse, let her think. If she's still not willing to open a conversation over time, write her a letter, slide it under the door. Right. There is a way to efficiently approach that conversation, but it is not by getting in her face. My other child is more like me, and she is more than happy to sit there and look at all the angles and finally arrive at, oh, yeah, I guess this would have made more sense to do it this way, huh? It's about knowing the kid and not thinking that one solution is going to work for all your children.
So important.
And I'm sorry if you're a new parent. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but
right.
The day I realized I needed different tools from my toolkit for different kids was a rough day. I'm not going to lie.
Right, right. And we've had kids accuse us of treating each other differently. You treat him differently than you treat me. And I'm like, that's something to actually be grateful for,
Yeah.
because it means that we acknowledge that you're a completely different person.
Mhm.
And so, yes, we have to treat you different than we treat everybody else. Just like we treat your sister different than we treat you, and we treat, this child different than we treat you. It's not because we're playing favorites.
Right.
They think it's because we're playing favorites. And we're like, no, it's not because we're playing favorites. It's because we've lived with you long enough that we know what works with you and what doesn't.
Mhm.
And the same is true with the others.
Yeah. I remember, and this is important for people who have littles. I remember with my older trying to do the one, what was it called? 5 4 3 2 1 magic or something. It was one of those strategies for behavioral modification that was supposed to work, right? Everyone was raving about how 5 to 1 magic was working, and it did not work for this kid. Period. It escalated her even more. And because I was told this works for everybody, I just kept trying. It wasn't until my second one came along and it worked perfectly for her that I had figured out what the alternative strategy that worked much better for the older was. And it was kinder and gentler to the way her brain worked and the way her body interacted with the world. And so don't think there's a one size fits all and keep bumping your head up against it thinking you're doing something wrong. Chances are it's just not the right fit for your kid.
Right. Well, and as parents, we're always learning. We're always learning and growing. I mean, even when they transition to adulthood, our oldest is 33. And so we're still learning. You get to a point where they move out, and then it's kind of like my husband said, okay, how do we communicate with them now? We're still their parents, but it's like, yeah, it's a different conversation to have with them now. When they come and they talk to us about things, we're just simply asking questions. We're not sure if they're seeking our advice or our opinion, so you just start asking questions to see where they are. And a lot of times you just discover that they are just sharing with you what they're doing and how they're doing it. And
Yeah.
it's just a sharing conversation. They don't want anything from you, and you're just like, hey, that was a great conversation. Just got to be the
I
supportive
actually
parent.
ask. I just straight up ask. Even when they're little,
Yeah.
even when they're younger, I just ask and say, "Hey, I have an idea. If you're looking for someone to help you solve this, do you want to hear my idea?" And they'll either say, "Yeah, sure. I'd love to," or "No, I'm just telling you how I feel." Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to know
Sometimes,
where I
yeah.
stand 'cause
Right.
yeah,
And
I don't want
sometimes
to
I'll
mess
just
it up.
ask them, so are you wanting my help? You want me to just listen? Am I just a sounding board? Are we brainstorming? You
Mhm.
know, I just want
Yeah,
to know
and
where
there
I
it is.
stand, right?
There's always learning and always growing, right? It's core four parenting. We work really intensely with people from pregnancy to their child's 5-year-old birthday because that's the readiness window for that next step of independence into school and then life. But it never ends. And it's one of the reasons why we developed our virtual village, right? Just taking one course and mastering self-soothing and sleep. It's awesome, but it's only one piece of the like kabillion piece puzzle. you know, Seeking out coaching and helping you design your mission statement and get cozy and safe in the space that you're parenting in. It's beautiful, but it's just the beginning. So the virtual village that we created is populated by core four parents who have that like mindset and they understand that they're being proactive and they're collaborating in their homes. And they take the journey together, and it's such a beautiful thing to watch.
Amazing. Yeah, that's the village that the younger parents are looking for. You know,
Mhm.
I see the young parents going, you know, everybody's saying it takes a village, but my village hasn't shown up. So I don't know why. And I think part of it is because we are in a major evolutionary um, point right now for humanity. Lots of things
Yeah.
are changing up to and including the way that we parent our children. And so it's hard to find that village. And so
Yeah.
it's exciting that you are providing that village. Here is where you can come and be with like-minded people that can help support you on this journey.
I mean, I live in a rural, nestled in the mountains, actual village. It's pretty. It's a wonderful place to live. It's a wonderful place to raise kids for lots of reasons. It was not always a great place to seek the like-minded parents I was looking for because we are a small community. We're not highly populated. And so creating a virtual village was really important to me. Making community the cornerstone of Core 4 was really important to me so that it doesn't matter where you live, you can still find your people. And so far, we're seeing beautiful things come out of that space.
That's
So I'm
amazing.
excited
That's
to
amazing.
keep populating the village, and we actually have some cool promos going on right now to bring in as many people at one time as possible and take our tribal space to the next level.
Nice. So where can people find you? Is it core4parenting.com?
Yes, so core4parenting.com is the home website, and on the homepage you'll see how more information about our methodology, about how we're blending the personal development with the early childhood education, and then you can explore what is the right level of service for you right now. The virtual village is there to look over. The courses are there to look over. And then our next coaching program, it's a group master coaching program, opens in April, and you can sign up to get on the wait list right now.
Amazing. I'm so excited. I'm so glad that you came and did this episode with me, Cara. This is really important information to get out there. This parenting evolution has been needed for a very long time. And so I'm just so excited. Like I said, I can't imagine what the world is going to be like in 20 years when these kids that are being parented in this way are the ones that are in the workforce and are starting to run our country and our world. So again, I'm just so grateful for what you're doing and for the fact that my podcast brought us together so that we could meet one
You.
another and help get these tiny humans into the world in the best possible way for them as we also support their parents along this totally new journey of parenting.
I'm very grateful as well. And I feel really blessed that I am living in this time period where I got to experience the last 20 years. And my children will be the ones who are having the next generation of children, and I will get to see that evolve too. It's just a great time to be alive and make really marketable differences in the way the world parents.
Amazing. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you.